Hello and welcome to this What in the Chess is Happening series in which we can cover anything chess related. So today I have 4 games to review for you, 3 shorter ones and one a little bit longer. But we'll just see all the wacky things that happen in different chess games. So these games I played at the local chess club recently. In the first game I played against Mike, who is a strong player, and we always have some tough games. So, it looks like I played with the white pieces at 84% accuracy rating versus Mike's 85.1. And if we look at the graph, it looks like I got a lead here, and you know, that looks like it was almost a winning lead, possibly. And then, you know, what in the chess happened? I just let it dissipate and disappear here until he had the edge. And then we were running out of time and we agreed to a draw. But let's see what happened in this game. So let me turn on the analysis. I played e4 and he responded with e6. So we have a French defense. And d4 is usually played in this. That way, you grab control of the center with these 2 pawns, and d5 is the response. The reason you pushed e6 was to be able to push this d5 pawn here. And now I play knight to d2. So there's different options in the French. I played this because it keeps this c pawn from being blocked, which I'll need to use later to defend the d4 pawn. So continuing on, we have an exchange here in the center. I recapture, and now an immediate attack on my knight. So, what should I do here? The computer recommends either capturing the knight immediately or playing bishop to d3, which looks like if you play bishop to d3, it looks like the queen could snatch up this pawn. But then there's a little trick of moving the bishop out of the way with check, and then you can pick off the queen. So something to watch out for. We pin the knight, and now bishop to e7 breaks the pin. We capture, so the pieces are exchanged, and now it looks like knight to f3 is recommended, and that's what I played. And here there are different options. My opponent just played a6 here to prevent maybe future bishop to b5 checks. So the computer recommends castling or retreating this bishop back to e7. That way you keep your bishop pair. And another option is just knight to d7. That way, if you capture the bishop, the knight can recapture and develop out here to f6. So, continuing on, a6 was played, and then finally I bring my bishop up to d3, but the computer recommends also capturing the bishop, getting rid of the bishop pair. But I thought, that maybe that would help him develop his queen. So I develop my bishop, but the computer did say it was better to just get rid of the bishop pair. So now we have knight to c6, an inaccuracy. So what should have been played? Knight to d7 would have been better, which would allow the knight to back up this bishop, because now we should just go ahead and get rid of that bishop, knocking out the bishop pair. The knight would recapture and land on a better spot out here. And then we could play c3 and protect this pawn in the middle. But in the game, what happened here? So, let's see. After knight to c6, we ended up playing c3. But once again, the computer wants us to knock out that bishop pair. So c3 is played. Now the computer says that that is the best move. And here the recommendation is either castling or retreating back to e7 to keep this bishop. But e5 was played in the game. The computer says that's still good, but at this point, white is ahead by about +1 and a quarter. So now the recommendation is once again to pick off that bishop. But what did we do? Well, we finally did it, but now the computer's saying that that's an inaccuracy, that it would have been better to develop the queen. So if we went ahead and developed that queen, what should we do next? Well, what should black do first? Well, looks like the top move is developing this bishop, pinning it to the knight, or pinning the knight to the queen. And what then? Well, even now it's saying castling immediately would have been better. So here the recommendation would be for us to castle, it looks like. Castle queen side. All right. The only thing about that is you do have this knight pinned and the bishop's lining up on your queen and your rook here. But the computer recommends instead of capturing here, you have to watch out because you unleash this attack on the king. It looks like immediate castling is what the computer wants here. And then we can play d5 to keep this bishop kind of blocked in maybe and attack the knight. But back to the game. What actually happened? So after the knight develops out here and attack the d4 pawn and I push to c3 to defend it, well then we have e5 adding more pressure to this d4 pawn. And here once again, the computer says that knight takes f6 is best, but when I actually play it now, the computer's changing its mind. So here, what did we have? Queen captures, which is the best response, and we follow it up with, well, it looks like it's close between pawn captures or knight captures here. So we capture with the pawn, and it looks like we thought in this game that the knight couldn't capture, but apparently, maybe it can. It looks like the computer wants queen to f4 right here. Wait a minute. That is not f4. What in the chess is happening here? Okay, so let's take that move back. Get rid of that move and toss it out. Delete. Okay, so queen to f4. So that is what they want. And here the best thing to do would be attack the queen. Now, what? Oh, now it doesn't like that. Now the computer's changing its mind, saying we should just go here and attack the queen with our queen. And then knight takes e5. Is that right? Okay, that doesn't look right, but knight takes e5, leaving the queen unprotected? Is that... Oh, yes. Okay, well, there's a good tactic. We get to see what's happening here. If we capture, then they can capture our bishop and fork the king and queen. So, crazy tactic to watch out for. Now, if we pin like this, there is f6, and then knight captures, and then queen captures. Then we should go ahead and capture and leave them with an isolated pawn. So that is one crazy variation that could happen after we got to this point. So that is what the computer recommended. Now, if they would have just captured here, it doesn't look like you could do that because of this queen to e2 move. But the computer says you can just go ahead and castle here. And then what? Then If we capture, it says that is the best move, is to just go ahead and capture there. You'd think that you would want to capture with the knight, but that is showing a slight edge for black. So if you do this, what do you have? Queen takes e5 is best. All right, so queen captures, knight captures, and now rook to e8. And then you would play f4, f6, attacking the pinned knight, and what next? Let's see here. The king would want to get out of that pinned predicament. Let's see, with king to f2, like this. And then, of course, you would exchange. Although now it's saying to go over this way. King to d2 would be a little bit better. But either way, you just capture. Now what? Rook at h to e1. Now it wants this, because the pawn is pinned here. And then what? Do we move the bishop? Huh. Well, g6 is what it recommends. And then we could go ahead and capture. Rook should capture. Pawn captures. So this is how the game could have played out. But white is ahead of pawn. It's isolated though. So you could try and come up here, help attack this pawn. And now rook to d1. But you get the idea. All right, let's keep this moving along and see what the chess is happening. So d takes e5. Queen to e6 was played in the game. That was a miss, as we saw the other options that were possible. You could even take the pawn, but queen to f4 looked like the computer likes that best. So here I played queen to e2. Now, the computer says that that's the best move, but then once I play it, it prefers castling. So, let's see what this castling move does. Castling, and then bishop to d7 is recommended. And then what do we do here? Now queen to e2 to help protect this pawn. And now it's saying queen to c2. So the computer can't make up its mind. Let's go back to what happened. We played queen to e2, helping to protect this pawn. And now my opponent plays b5. Apparently this is a mistake, which I wasn't able to capitalize on. So let's see why this was a mistake. But before we do, what should they have played? It looks like bishop to d7. So it really wants that move. Bishop to d7. And now we should play b4, or castle. So I would probably go with castling here. And the computer changes its mind. It says it wants rook to d1. So here, what do we have? The recommendation is queen to h6. But at this point, it looks like this would hold the advantage for white. But in the game, I played queen to e2. We had b5. And then I go ahead and castle. So white is ahead here by quite a bit. Now we have h6. And looks like the computer wanted a rook to b8 move, but my opponent is getting ready to fianchetto the bishop and then castle queenside. So we have rook at f to e1, which is the second best move. So we're still ahead pretty good. Bishop fianchettos, getting ready to castle queenside. And now we play a bad move, a mistake here. So this allows, well, it allows this to be captured, and then it pulls up this pawn, which does defend this pawn, but then leaves you with a weak backward pawn on a half-open file. So, what should we have played instead? It looked like a4. because now we can threaten to break open this queen side to prevent the opponent from castling over here. So in this case, the recommendation is to castle over that way. And so here we should, interesting choice here. Now it's saying that we should ignore this pawn and just centralize our rook. Let's see what happens if we do that. It says black is still ahead, but now it's saying not to do that, that h3 should be played. All right, h3, then rook at f to d8, and now it's saying to go ahead and attack this pawn. But I don't know, at this point it says white should be winning here. But let's continue on and play this out, see what happened in the game. We played knight to d4, a mistake here. So they capture, leaving us with this backward pawn. And now we have queenside castling. And what happened next? Well, we played a blunder. Played this, trying to get rid of the bishop over here that's protecting the king, but this just gives up a pawn, and black is ahead now. So instead of that, what would have been better? It looks like queen to e3, maybe. What did the computer say? Queen to e3. It likes that best. But, how do we hold on to this pawn anyway? They can just start piling up. Put the queen here. Threaten a mate. Oh, wait. Can the queen go there and threaten a mate? If you go there, the queen could capture this and attack your queen. You could go up here and check. All right. It does look like that is what it would want. Queen to d5. And then, what? Bishop to e4. Possibly. Now it says that's an inaccuracy. Queen to h3 would have been better. Oh, with a check. Okay. Now here, they could take the pawn and we'd trade off maybe. But it actually wants this move now. So queen to h3. And then what do you do? They could just take the... Oh, you're in check. So the king would have to move over to b8. And now we have bishop to e4. Queen captures the pawn. And it's centralized, so that's good. We get rid of this defender. The king captures. And now looks like a4. So this would have kept white ahead in this game, but I don't know. We were running out of time at the place that we played at, and so instead, after this blunder, they capture, I capture, we trade off a little bit, capture, and I made another inaccuracy here, and now the game has shifted in black's favor. So instead of that move, it wanted a3. The computer prefers that. And then, I don't know, I was kind of worried about this scenario, just setting up here, attacking my queen. Then what do we have? h3 is recommended. So something like that. Rook to d2 looks pretty good. Attack. And then what do you do? Queen up to g4 is recommended. All right. So in the game, we had b3, and then my opponent played f6. So apparently this is a mistake. That queen to d5 would have been better. It kind of guards this diagonal from any sneaky checks. And here, king to f1 would have been a good response. But then you have that. So with that, then what? E4, queen takes, rook takes, and then the pawn could snatch up this right here. Or can it? Maybe that can't be done because you could start pushing here and then try and pick these off. The recommendation is that, or maybe just c5 here. You just start pushing to get a passed pawn of your own, and now rook to f4, rook to d1, king up to e2, and you just defend. All right, in the game, f6 was played, and then I moved here, and we agreed to a draw because we were running out of time. So let's move on. The next two games are very short miniature games. So let's see what in the chess was happening in these next two games. So same chess club. In this one, I played with the black pieces. So let me flip the board around. I had the black pieces. I played against Vinny with white, and he played at a 65.2 and I played at 96.9, which usually that's good, but this was a short miniature game. And so I had one great move, one inaccuracy. My opponent had 3 mistakes. So let's take a look here. Analysis on. And he starts out with g3. So I just play e5, thinking that if he plays e4, it'll block in his bishop later in the game. So he fianchettos. I go ahead and jump up here, thinking, if he takes me, he gets rid of his bishop pair. And sure enough, he captures. But that's a mistake. You don't want to just give up your bishop pair. Now you have weaknesses here in case you have to castle over there. So it looks like c4 would have been a better move according to the computer. c4 is what they want, and then we would just continue developing, maybe this knight to f6 move. The computer likes that. So in the game, he captures my knight, and then I capture this way, but the computer wanted me to capture towards the center, which I thought I could at least get my queen out and this bishop out by capturing away from the center. But the computer prefers that, which would allow you to push forward and have a nice strong pawn center. And because of that, the top recommendation is c4 to stop you from, not to stop you, but now if I push forward, you could capture, but then I'll recapture. And then there's a possible check to look out for. Anyway, in the game, we had this capture away from the center, and knight to f3 was played, attacking the pawn. But the computer prefers the other knight to move because it keeps an eye on e4 here. Because he didn't do that and just played knight to f3, we're able to chase this knight. And that's the best move according to the computer. Now he has to waste time running with this knight, and he can't move here and attack because our queen is covering that. So he runs to the edge. The computer prefers going all the way back to the back rank up here. But I guess he didn't want to do that. And now he really has to watch out. So I jump up here so he can't castle. And all he had to do is play rook to g1. And then his knight could escape back in there and be protected by the rook. But what does he do? He finally develops this knight, but now it's too late. He's attacking this unprotected pawn. But we have g5. So here my opponent was like, what is going on? I'm sure he was thinking, so he just decides to take the pawn, but we snatch up the knight. And he resigned here. And we quickly started another game, which I'll go into now. Let's see what happened in the next game. All right. Where are we? Looks like this one, I believe. Yes, and here this looks crazy. Once again, I had the black pieces, and my opponent had white, and he played 49.9 versus my 58.5, which, this just looks terrible. I'm asking myself, what in the chess is happening here? Okay, so let's take a look. Turn on the analysis, and another short game, as you can tell. So same thing. He starts here. We go ahead and push forward, and E5 is played, or excuse me, E4. The computer doesn't like that, though. It prefers C4. So we just develop a knight, and once again, the computer doesn't like that. It wants an immediate D5 to go ahead and target this pawn. But if we did that, if they captured and we captured with the queen, I guess this would be a problem. Yeah, if they can't capture us, because then we could go here and well, okay, they can do that. They would have to block with their queen here. And then, maybe we trade off queens. All right, so in the game, F4 was played, a mistake. Knight to C3 would have been better, just developing a piece. So we go ahead, after F4, we play capture of this pawn. So we knock this out. Once again, the computer wanted D5 instead. So the queen comes up attacking the pawn. And what do? We just pick off another pawn. And so here's an attack on the knight, but this is a mistake. The queen should have just captured here. Because now we could do this. The computer says that's a mistake. We're still ahead here. We're threatening to capture the rook and promote. So my opponent goes here, and then I check. So here he just resigned. He probably should have kept on playing here. He probably thought that he's in check, and I'll just try and pick off this pawn, but it's protected. The pawn's protected by his queen. I do have this move, though. A possible, adding, just pushing forward here, unleashing this bishop. But anyway, computer says he should have gone to D1, and then we should develop up to knight up here to D4. Okay, this was just a miniature, so I'll show the final game, game 4 here. My opponent resigned at this point, but he should have probably played on. So in the final game, I had white. My opponent had the black pieces. Vinny, once again, I played at 71.6, and 61.4 is what he played at. So this game is really a game where you can ask what in the chess is happening, because look at this mess. I gain an advantage, then I blunder it away. Then I hang on and I'm fighting. He's winning the whole time. And then I turn the game around and then give it away. And then I gain an advantage again. And I hold on to it. I almost lose it, gain it. And then bang, here he had a chance to get a draw, which we'll have to take a look at, but he missed that opportunity and I ended up winning. Now, what else did we have here? I had one brilliant move, so that's pretty cool. You don't get those too often, unless you're a chess master, or a chess professional, I should say. All right, what do we have here? 2 great moves, and he had 2 great moves. Now the bad moves. I had 2 inaccuracies, he had 0. I had 3 mistakes, he had 3. I had 4 misses, and he had 2. But I had 1 blunder, but he had 4. And that's what cost him the game, those 4 blunders. So this says white broke through in the end game with some strong maneuvers. So let's see what those were. Okay. Turn on the analysis. The game began with d4, d5. So this is usually more strategic, closed positions, but not always. Knight to f3, waiting to see what my opponent will do. And he plays knight to c6 here. So, an interesting variation. A lot of times you don't want to block in your c-pawn with the knight, but this is possible to play. So here, I go ahead and play e3. Just getting ready to develop this bishop and castle. So knight to f6, although the computer wanted him to pin, and bishop to e2. That way if he pins, he can't pin because the bishop is covering this knight. But the computer preferred an immediate c4, which would have been a better move because if I play c4, now my wing pawn is attacking a more valuable central pawn, and if he captures, it just helps me develop this bishop. So I play that. They play b6 here, getting ready to fianchetto, but this is a mistake. An immediate bishop to f5 would have been better, taking control of these central squares here. So I just go ahead and castle. The computer wanted an immediate knight to e5, which is what I should have played, because if I would have played knight to e5 and he captures here, well then I can capture and chase his knight away. And then, once this knight moves, there's a possibility of jumping up here and using these pawns to get a lock on the center of the board. So, castling, and now h6 was played. I guess he didn't want me jumping my knight forward, but I don't know. There's not much of a threat if I would have done that anyway. So here, let's see. Bishop to b5 is played. The computer wants, once again, knight to e5. But I didn't play that. I go here. He breaks the pin on this, that I have on the knight against the king. And now we have c4 as being the recommended move. So looks like the computer wants that. And it says that's best. Just attacking this pawn. And then they would play maybe a6, forcing my bishop to make a decision. And we should capture, it looks like. So, in the game, I make a blunder. This was the first game of the evening, and I guess I wasn't focused yet. And I just make a terrible blunder, thinking I'm putting pressure on this knight. But we have the little tactic here of capture. Now, if I capture, the knight just moves back up here and recaptures. So I had to reevaluate what was going on, and it looks like the only thing I can do is capture here. So I go ahead and capture, but now my bishop is lost, my rook is under attack, and so, what do I do next? I just pick off the knight over here, trying to make the game a little bit unbalanced because I'm already behind in material. I'm pretty much losing. So capture. I just keep going here, attacking. Now we have a bishop recapture and the queen recaptures. So the game continues with e5. He puts these pawns right in the center, a strong pawn duo. And the game continues with knight to c3. The computer likes that move. And he pushes forward. So this is probably premature. If we go back here, castling would have been better because At this point, he's ahead by +2 of material. Okay, so he should just castle, get his king to safety. He could line a rook up here on my king. He needs to get his other rook activated. So he shouldn't be, doing crazy pawn maneuvers in the middle of the board when his king is stuck in the middle of the board. So I capture, because when you're behind in material, you want to trade off pawns if you can. So I go ahead and do that, although the computer wanted me to improve the position of my knight by jumping it forward. Here, the queen captures. Now, this move is not as good as the pawn capturing, but I don't know, maybe he was worried about me checking him, but he could have just blocked with his queen if I checked with my queen. So here, this allows me to chase his queen. The queen retreats back, but now I can bring the rook in and attack, although the computer likes a4 better here. Let's see what happens. Now it's saying this is best. So we chase his queen. The queen moves here, protecting this pawn, aiming over here. So if my knight moves, maybe he can start trying to pick off pawns. And now we have queen to b5 check. So was that best? According to the computer, it was. And now the best thing to do is block with the pawn, which he does. So here, I retreat back to b5. The computer likes that because it prevents him from castling. But he attacks my queen, and this is a mistake, it appears. It would have been better just to go ahead and try and trade off more material, because if you're ahead, you want to trade off pieces. The less pieces I have, the more you can use your extra pawns in the end game, your extra material to win. So, if we trade it off, then he would have a rook against my knight, which could still be a little tricky, but let's move on here. So, in this case, the best thing to do would be to avoid trades and move over here. Let's see if the computer changes its mind. Now it's saying no, that we should just go ahead, capture, and strand this king out in the center. So, if we did that, I don't know if I like that, because the king captures. We've given up our rook, which could be valuable in the end game. The recommendation now is queen to a4, targeting this unprotected pawn. But you have queen to d7. And now, it's looking like, it could be dangerous if this knight moves away. There's a threat of a mate on the back rank. And here, queen to c4 is recommended. All right, back to the game. Let's see what happened here. The queen is under attack. So my opponent, if we look back here, we move our queen up, checking. He blocks. We move here to prevent him from castling, so he attacks with the bishop. So the bishop is attacking our queen. We find the best move. There's a threat here that we capture this pawn, and then, if the bishop is captured by the A pawn, then we pick off this rook. So he decides to push forward here, and this is a blunder. So bishop back to g7 would have been better, and then try and get ready to castle. Then, of course, we should go ahead and pick off this pawn. So this is what we are looking at. That he should just go ahead and castle. And then we want to play bishop back to e3, it looks like. And now it's saying bishop to c7. Okay, what happened in the game after this blunderous b5 pawn push? Well, we have white has one move that pushes the game in his favor, and that is the knight sacrifice, and the computer says that that is brilliant. So here my opponent, what did he do? He goes ahead and plays the second best move and captures, but it would have been better to just go ahead, play rook to c8. Now if rook to c8 was played, now the recommendation is to just pick off this pawn this is an interesting choice here. If they try and pin this knight to the queen, then I'm thinking you could probably capture this pawn with check and attack the queen at the same time. They would capture, maybe trade off, and the rook picks this off, but you would have two passed pawns over here. So, back to the game. Well, let's take a quick look at that. The computer says rook to c7 would be best here. All right, what if they did that? What does this do? Well, now that is a blunder because knight captures. Oh, you're threatening a mate here. This is even better. Knight captures, and then you threaten to jump up here. You're attacking the rook at the same time. So what do they do? Rook to c8. Oh, and then you're going to have a discovered attack. Oh, crazy. Yeah, it just does not look too good here. Let's say they do that. Well, now you could just jump over here and then pick this off. So, but the recommendation is that check, rook down to c6. Oh, yeah, it just looks awful. Okay, back to the game. So, knight takes b5. My opponent captured. This allowed me to capture with check. And the king is running here. Because, if he tries to block with the queen, the rook can pick it off. Or, no, the queen can capture and it's checkmate. So, the king has to run, and he goes here. Now, here I had a winning move, and I don't know, somehow I must have missed this. I could have just gone right here, forking the king and the rook. So, queen to b7 is what I should have played next. Queen to b7. Where does the king go? Over to f6, trying to run for cover. And then we would just pick off this rook. And, what next? King up to g7 here to kind of get some safety. And then we just pick off a pawn as well. All right. So what happened in the game? We had bishop to c5. So I just missed the opportunity. I decided to check. And now, let's see. Black is pretty much winning here. So he runs. That's the best move. Now we retreat back thinking, I made a mistake. And a6 attacking our queen. The queen moves here, which is best because we can swing over and threaten this fork. Queen to f3 check and pick off the rook. And I lucked out because my opponent, instead of playing king to g7, he went pawn hunting. So, what happens if you go pawn hunting when you shouldn't? Well, you can get in trouble, and we'll see how it happened here. So, what should he have done instead of that blunder queen pawn hunting move? It looks like rook to e8 would have been best. So, rook, hold on. Let me go back here. Rook. Whoa, does rook to e8 really? Is that what they were? No, they said rook to c8. Or now it's saying king up to g7. So what did this say? Rook to e8 is best. So the recommendation is that. Just creating a battery of rook and queen. And then we don't want to go pawn hunting or that queen will pick us off. So here, the recommendation is c4. We just start pushing our passed pawns up the board. And even after that move, black would be winning here. You know, if they get that rook out, this other rook that's not doing anything in the corner, yeah, it's just not looking too good. So, in the game, queen to e2 is played. We have a pawn hunt and check. Forking the king and the rook. The king runs for safety and we pick the rook off. The queen continues the pawn hunt. So now it looks like we should have centralized our queen and protected this pawn, but instead I start pawn hunting. The computer prefers this move, queen to e4, protecting the pawn. But I was worried about this pawn just starting to march down the board. That is one of the possibilities, but at least here we could maybe harass the king a little bit. What is the recommendation? If we went there, they like bishop to e7, getting this rook out, then queen to g4 check, king up to f8. Oh, and now you're threatening to line up on the king. Queen over to f5. All right. Oh, now they recommend we just check. So, I mean, you go there, protect this pawn. That would be better. King back here. And you could go back and forth maybe. All right. In the game, we capture, they capture, and now we have rook to a1 should have been played, but instead we just drop over here trying to consolidate, and then they push forward, and that's a blunder. Opening a line right to the king. What should they have played? Bishop to e7. They should have tried to bring this bishop around. So now, after this blunder, we didn't take advantage of it. I should have gone here, attacking the king, and then f6 would lead to a mate in 3 because the queen could go over here and capture. Then the king would have to move, and then, well, let's take a look at that. If they played this, we go ahead and capture with a check. The king has to move, here or here. Let's say they go here. Well, then now we have queen to f7. And then once they block, well, then we just capture. And it would be mate. All right, so in the game, I decided to go here and attack the queen. So now we have, let's see, that move, protecting the pawn, getting out of the line of fire, and also threatening my queen. So here I thought about just capturing, and then the pawn would recapture. Then we could move here and just try and pick this off. So I played that move. Computer prefers queen to a7. What if I would have just captured there? Well, then they would recapture. Now, rook. They want rook to c7. But, I mean, what if I did that? Now you have bishop to e7. Rook takes d3. Rook to d8. And then, I don't know, do I go ahead and trade off here and try and use my extra pawn? That's a possibility. So, let's see what happens in the game. Queen to b6 was played. And now a blunder here. So why is this a blunder? The queen moves to d4. Here we should attack in the middle. And I see that he's targeting this rook. What should he have played? Bishop to e7. So here we go the wrong way. We attack with the queen. We're still winning, but the better move would have been what? This. Check. King would have to go to h7. That would be the best move, or g8, but that's not as good. So we would have that. And then now rook. Rook to c7. Okay, it looks like I can do that because the rook is covering this. The bishop is covering this, so the queen can't back rank mate me. All right, and then here, what should I do? Or, well, it's their turn, so what should they do? They recommend bishop to e7, which I guess you can't take that, or the queen will come down here with a back rank mate. So they can go there. Then the recommendation is to capture here. Then king captures, and yeah, then it's looking really bad here. Now, queen takes with check. The king has to move here. And then you have rook to c8 check. Ooh, and it's looking rough. Block. And now queen to g5. King over to h7. And queen to h4. Oh my gosh. Or h5 here. But you get the idea. We're just chasing them all around and winning. So, back to the game. My opponent moved there. I centralized my queen, checking his king. He runs up to safety here. And, he's also threatening to bring his bishop out maybe at some point and attack my queen. But the game continues with a pawn hunt. I pick off another pawn. And his queen jumps back up here to help defend. We push, giving our king a little escape room here. And he wants me to trade off material. But I decide to keep the queens. And he starts pushing. So we want to block that. The queen jumps up. He wants to trade queens again. But I go up here to b7. So now he's trying to trade bishops. But this is a bad move because rook to c8, check. He moves. It looks like it would have been better to block. So he could have held on a little bit better if he blocked with the bishop. And then what do we do? Then the recommendation is rook to d8. Oh, d8, sorry. That was not d8. I could have had a d8. All right. So, queen to c4. And then, I don't know, they want black to move queen to c4, but it's looking bad. So let's see what actually happened in the game. Rook to c8. He moves here, allows me to capture. Oh, it didn't like that move. It said that is an inaccuracy. Queen to b2 check would have been even better. Oh, yes. Okay. Queen to b2 check. Man, you have to look out for those long sweeping queen moves. Now, what does he do here? What does he do? F6 is what I would think. If you play g6, well then, what can you do with g6? King to g6. Then you check with the rook. You have to watch out for a perpetual check possibility here. If your queen jumps down here, check. The king moves up. Well, I guess the king could just move here. So, anyway, let's see what would happen if he blocked like that. Well, then, yeah, it looks bad. It's kind of what happened in the game, which I'll show you here. So in the game, we had a capture, and then we captured here. And I leave this queen on this diagonal so my king can come up and the queen will cover that, so there's no surprise checks here. And of course he does try to check me. I go here. And it looks like it would be better to move there. But now we capture, and it doesn't like that. It wanted me to retreat my bishop instead, so it says it's better to do that. And then queen where? Queen to e6, guarding the pawn. And then we should check the king from here. Whew. All right. Well, we could take a quick look at that. Queen to e6, protecting the pawn. Bishop checks. King goes to h7. And now what? Queen to b5. Queen to b5. It actually liked this move better. So, yeah, that looks better because now we're attacking this. So, what? King to g6 or queen to g6, but it looks like that would be best. Then check. f5, moving the pawn forward. Queen to d8. All right, anyway, back to the game. We capture. They move out here delivering a check, but we just block. Then they exchange off. They shouldn't have done that, but I guess they were worried about my queen giving them problems. And the king tries to come up, attacking my bishop. I just move back. He moves forward, and now we're just going to start marching our pawns up here, and he won't be able to stop them. We could even pick this off, like move our king up and then come over and go after this. But anyway, so hopefully, this new What in the Chess is Happening series will be interesting. I'll try and find different, crazy games with a lot of wacky positions. Anyway, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to support the channel. Feel free to leave comments with whatever you want to say. You could leave questions or requests if there is anything you'd like to see in the future. All right. Well, thank you for watching and have a super chess day.